She stood for a long while at the deserted alley, her gaze cast far away as if waiting for a bus to arrive. She imagined, if only one of her children would step down, run toward her, embrace her tightly and softly say, "Mother, I'm home." But the buses kept passing, people kept walking, the rain kept falling, and she remained quietly alone. At night, she turned restlessly in bed. On the small wooden table, she poured cold tea into a cup, sipping its bitterness by the edge of her bed, her dim eyes staring into the distance through the window. For a fleeting moment, she reached for an old sheet of paper, painstakingly writing a letter to her eldest son in Hanoi. Her trembling, crooked handwriting read, "Kai, it's been a long time since I last saw you. I've grown weaker now, living alone in the countryside feels so lonely. If you have time, let me visit the city for a few days. I'm still fine, only that I often lose sleep." When she finished, she folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and sealed it with some paste made from leftover rice. Without a stamp, unsure how to send it, she asked the motorbike taxi driver at the market to take it to the district post office. Returning home, she lay down on the hammock, placed her hand on her chest, and closed her eyes to welcome another long night, one that, again, might not grant her a full sleep. The next morning, the sunlight pierced through the old gourd trellis, scattering golden streaks across the brickyard like fragmented memories. She sat by the stove, cooking a pot of plain porridge, her frail hands holding tightly onto the worn handle of a firewood stick. Smoke stung her eyes, yet she remained patient, as though clinging to the rhythm of her familiar life. More than half a month had passed since the letter was sent. Every morning, she went out to the alley, waiting for the postman to appear. She knew that few people still exchanged handwritten letters nowadays, yet in her heart she still held on to hope, as if that letter were the last thread tying her to the son she once trusted and loved most. Each day, she put on her worn brown shirt, her old conical hat, and stood by the old muntingia tree at the village gate. Some days she waited nearly an hour, until exhaustion forced her to sit on the stone step, still watching and waiting. Passers-by would ask, "Who are you waiting for, Granny?" She would smile gently. "I'm waiting for a letter, maybe my son will reply." The person would shake their head with a faint smile and walk away, leaving her there, her heart as still as the midday pond. Day after day, into the second week, restlessness began to stir inside her. Not out of blame, but out of worry. Perhaps the letter was lost, or perhaps her son was too busy to read it, or maybe he simply didn't know what to say to his mother. At night, she reopened her small notebook, checking the address again, number 18, Old Housing Block, near Long Bien Bridge. Long ago, when he was still a factory worker, he once brought her there. Back then, he and his wife were renting a shabby room, but it was warm. She still remembered the aluminum pot borrowed from a neighbor so she could cook noodles for her son. She remembered that rainy night, curled up on the cold tiled floor, yet still feeling warm because he was by her side. Now things had changed. Her son had become successful, with a grand house, a luxury car, and children attending international schools. Yet every time he called, his voice was hurried. Once, she overheard his wife whisper, "Don't call now, he's in a meeting." She hung up quietly, without reproach, and gradually stopped calling altogether. Tonight, like every other night, she remained sleepless. A crescent moon hung over the old tiled roof, its fragile light spilling into her bed. She turned toward the window, listening to the rustling wind through the bamboo grove, her eyes wide open in the dark, as if waiting for something distant, though she knew not when it would ever come. That morning, Mrs. Duong decided to go to the district post office. Her worn plastic sandals on her feet, an old conical hat in hand, she caught a motorbike taxi to the town. Standing at the counter, she asked the clerk, "Miss, the letter I sent 2 weeks ago, do you know if it has reached Hanoi yet?" The young woman hesitated before explaining, "Ordinary letters cannot be tracked, only parcels have codes for checking." Mrs. Duong nodded, thanked her, and quietly walked away. On the way back, the motorbike passed by fields of young rice, their gentle fragrance drifting in the breeze. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and a vague emptiness welled up inside her. When she got home, instead of going into the kitchen, she sat down on the wooden bed and pulled out a bundle of old letters her children once sent. The handwriting of her son Kai was still clear. "Mother, I'll study hard so that one day I can make your life comfortable." She gently stroked the yellowed paper, her nose stinging with tears. At 75, she no longer longed for comfort. All she wished for was a simple line, "Mother, I miss you." Yet every letter she sent out disappeared without a reply, just like her own life, quietly devoted to her children without asking for anything in return. The next morning, after many days of rain, the sun finally broke through. She heard the sound of a motorbike stopping at the gate. A familiar voice called out, "Mother, are you home?" She hurried outside and saw her middle daughter, Lan, parking the bike, carrying a small bag of gifts. Some sweets, sesame salt, and a box of vitamins. The two sat under the longan tree. Looking around, Lan sighed. "With the house like this and you being so frail now, why don't you come stay with me for a while?" Mrs. Duong hesitated, her heart stirring. Many nights she had wondered, if one of her children came to take her away, should she go? At last, she nodded gently. "All right, since you've said so, I'll get ready." Lan's face lit up as she reminded her, "Just pack lightly, Mother, my house is small." The old woman only smiled. "I've lived lightly all my life, dear." In her room, she opened a small wooden chest. Inside were only a few brown blouses, some worn scarves, and a pair of old sandals. She picked 3 intact sets, folded them neatly, added her medicines, a packet of herbal ointment, and the family photo album. Everything fit snugly into a single small bag. That was the entire belonging of a 75-year-old mother after a lifetime tied to this home. Before leaving, she lit incense on the family altar and whispered to her late husband, "I'll go stay with the children for a while. Don't worry. If you miss me, come back in my dreams." The smoke curled upward, wavering like a farewell. She locked the door firmly, slung the bag over her shoulder, and stepped out of the gate.